I'm going to talk about life that happens along the way today, so stick around and hear where we have been and what I've been up to. Hi friends, and welcome to the Budget Bounce. If we haven't met yet, I'm Jen, and we talk all about living life on a budget, saving for our future, paying down our debt, and all the life that happens along the way. And there has been a lot of that recently. And as it happens, we tend to live a lot of life all the time, and then we have these peaks. And when I say live a lot of life, what I'm talking about is the hard stuff, the things that just make things a lot harder than they need to be. But they happen. And because we live with this underlying higher level of that anyway, because Matt and I both struggle with our mental health, that means that when we have peaks, they're really, really difficult and challenging. So let's talk a little bit about where I've been and what we've been doing. So I've taken a few months off again, unexpectedly. I did not plan to do that. I actually was on a roll and doing all kinds of content in the fall when I hurt myself. And it's a long story about how it happened, but I had a problem with my Achilles tendon. And it started out with actually an issue with my knee that when I just started physical therapy for that, then my Achilles tendon started bothering me up high. So not down on your ankle like you think, but up high in my calf. And that ended up in this, where I was in a boot for a few weeks. I think I was in it for at least a month. I think it was closer to 5 weeks before I finally I worked my way out of it, because being in a boot totally changes your gait, and I already have back issues. So being in the boot really made everything hurt. Honestly, it just shifted everything. And so I worked my way out of that so I didn't have to wear it anymore. But through that, before we figured out what the problem was, I was in the boot for 5 weeks or whatever, but it took 2 or 3 weeks to figure out what was going on. And my pain level just kept getting worse and worse. And it was at a time when I had to actually be working on site at the office all the time. And not just that, but I had to be on my feet delivering training, because we were starting this Q4 push of all these things. We'd had them planned for months. And so I'm standing I'm standing a lot of the day, and that's just exacerbating the problem that I don't know what the problem is. A couple of visits to the ER, because every time I said my leg hurts, with my history of blood clots and whatnot, they wanted me to get checked out for blood clots. It was a mess. And all of that, Matt was struggling with there were a lot of other things going on for both of us. But Matt had been struggling and kind of sitting on the cusp. And then when I got hurt, and I was just in pain. Sometimes I was crying. It hurt so much all the time. And I got to the point where I couldn't get around. I was on crutches, actually. At one point it popped in the back of my calf, and an explosion of pain. I almost passed out from the pain, and I had to wake Matt up to come. I was getting ready for work. I had my boot in my arm. I was getting ready to go to the other room, the spare bedroom, to put it on while he was sleeping. And I couldn't put any weight on it. So I ended up on crutches, actually, after that happened. Anyway, so that's been going on. But when my health issues came, Matt just becomes, his anxiety when it comes to me and the kids is just off the charts, and he really struggles to control it. And it bubbled over, and not just a little bit. And he started a leave of absence in the middle of October. My issues started the very end of September, beginning of October, and within a couple of weeks, he was in pretty bad shape. So anxiety, if you don't know, severe anxiety can be very debilitating in a number of ways. It can manifest in different ways. This time for him, it's just his we're not seeing it outwardly, like it's not as physical. The first time he had it so bad 5 years ago, which was when we started this whole journey, it was the catalyst for everything. The first time he was physically shaking, like his whole body was shaking. He couldn't control it. He doesn't have that this time, but I would say this episode is, and it's more than an episode, this bout is just as bad as what it was 5 years ago. And I feel awful for him, and I worry about him a lot. And He's been off, it's the middle of January, so he's been off work for 3 months now, and he's probably not going to go back for at least a couple more months because he has not been able to get it under control. And as an example, here's an example of how it manifests. So he cannot keep things straight, and it is not able to manage the work that he has to do because there's a lot of different moving parts happening all the time. And this is an example of why. So just a couple of days ago, he needed to go pick something up for Xanthi, and she sent the picture of where it was, and I said, it's at the Jewel by this city, because there's one it's called City Line Plaza, because it's right on the border, First Street or First Avenue, whatever it is, of two cities. Okay, so it's in our city, but across the street it's the next city. And I said, it's the one over by there. And I named the city. And I showed it to him. But when he left to go to do the pickup for her, he went to the one that's closer to our house. It's in the next city the other way. So that was that. And then later in the day, at lunchtime, I talked to him and said, hey, we need to use the little Smokies in here. I pointed to them in the refrigerator. We have clear drawers. And they were right up against the drawer. And I said, hey, we need to use these because we didn't use them all up at the holidays. So why don't you figure out something to make with that for dinner tonight? And when I came downstairs, he had grabbed the andouille sausage that I bought and made that instead, which, by the way, was very good. It was actually delicious. But I had bought it for a specific recipe that I wanted to make for Henry. And I told Matt that I had done that like the week before. I said, hey, I bought this because I want to make something that I know Henry's going to like. And then I had pointed and shown him, and he acknowledged to me, yes, okay. But then by the time dinner came around just a few hours later, he ended up making something else. Now, out of context of everything else that's going on, that seems like, oh, he just forgot. He just forgot. But I spend a lot of time in my therapy appointments. I have weekly therapy appointments with a psychologist, and I have been going for 5 years. Since this happened the first time, I have been going to him every year for 5 years, every week for 5 years. And part of what we talk about is me helping Matt manage and work through all of that, and me managing my own emotions around that, because it's frustrating. I came downstairs and went, oh, you used andouille sausage? Because my knee jerk was crap. But that doesn't help the situation, especially after I said it. I realized this is the second time today that he's made this, what seemed like a small issue. And it really, on the scale of things, it's not a big deal, but these are symptoms of his condition. So I was physically having issues and also mentally struggling, but I was physically having issues, and Matt was, has been working through and going to therapy and working on his meds, and we're trying to get him in for a sleep study because he's not sleeping right. So he finally has that next week. We think his machine needs to be recalibrated, and it took months to get in there. He was supposed to go in December, and it got pushed back to January because insurance hadn't approved it. So here we are, 6 weeks later, he's finally getting his sleep study. So all of these things have been going on. And of course, it was the holidays. And last year, I hosted Thanksgiving and Christmas here and loved it. Loved every minute. It's so much work, but I loved it. I loved having everybody here. We are in a home that we can do that, and that my mom doesn't have to worry about doing those things. Her and my dad can just drive up here. They live about an hour away. They can just drive up here and show up, and everything's done. And I love that. So I really wanted to do that this year, but I had to bow out for Thanksgiving because at the beginning of October, I was like, I can't, I'm on crutches. It was the middle of October. I'm on crutches, and I have no idea when I'm going to be off of them. I don't know what's happening here. At that point, I didn't know if I was going to have surgery. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so we actually went to my parents for the day, and it was great. My mom loved putting on dinner for everybody. Then Christmas came, and I said at Thanksgiving, I'm doing Christmas no matter what. I'm doing it. And it was difficult. It was difficult to do it. I'm out of the boot and everything, but it's still difficult to get around. It doesn't mean I don't have issues with my leg. I do. In fact, it was bothering me so much the weekend before when I was trying to do prep to get ready for the weekend of Christmas. I was working in the kitchen and I got up and took a step to go towards the stove, and I had that pop again. And it's happened like 4 times throughout this issue. The pop wasn't as big as the one that I spoke to you about that I mentioned that I couldn't put any weight on it. I could put a little bit of weight on it, but not much. And so I was back in the boot the weekend before Christmas and back to using a crutch, which is fine when I'm not at home, if I have to go out of the house. But at home, there's too many things to move around. So Matt grabbed me a cane, actually, because getting up and moving around hurt. Every step I took hurt. And so this is where I have been. It is when you're going through physical pain like that, it is exhausting. Plus I was fighting my own, just my own mental health struggles with all the things that were going on before that ever happened. Plus worrying about Matt and trying to make sure that everything's in order when it comes to him. It's just, I just couldn't, there was nothing that I could do to even think about creating content. Then I finally seemed to be coming around the other side. I was just about done with wearing my boot. I was feeling a lot better. Physical therapy was going well, all of that. And I finally started my vacation. And I had 7 days. I had Thursday, Friday, and then the whole week of Thanksgiving scheduled off. And I was so excited for my PTO. But that week, I started not feeling good on Monday night. And then sure enough, I tested positive for COVID on Thursday night. So I spent the first 6 calendar days of my vacation that I had big plans for in bed, sleeping. So this time when I got it, for those of you that have been around, this time when I got it, it was not nearly as bad as the first time. So the first time, if you don't know, I was hospitalized and I had to actually come home with oxygen. It really, really attacked my lungs, and I didn't have the lung capacity that I did before I got sick, and I had to come home with oxygen to be able to walk around and that kind of thing. And I was off for, I think I missed like 5 weeks of work and all of that. It was the sickest I've ever been in my life. Okay. Fast forward, I'm vaccinated. I have all but the most recent, I guess there's 2 boosters I haven't had now, but it was only 1 at the time that I hadn't had. I get it. And it was like a really, really awful, severe chest cold. That is really the best way I can describe it. And then I never had any fever. So that made it, I was exhausted. The fatigue, that's how I knew it wasn't a cold. The fatigue was out of this world. And that's what, that's a very well-known symptom with COVID. And so I was in bed. I was in bed 12 hours at night, and then I'd take like a 3-hour nap during the day. And when I wasn't in bed sleeping, I was sitting on the couch just vegging, I was just so exhausted I couldn't do anything. So I got through that and still managed to be able to do Thanksgiving with my parents, but because of the timing of everything, we couldn't do it on Thanksgiving Day. We went down to their house on Sunday afterwards. That was the first day that I could be around people without a mask, and all was well. It took me a couple weeks to get back to 100%, but I much, much better than the last time. But again, it sent me reeling in the middle of everything, just when I was trying to finish up and wrap up my physical issues with my leg. Here comes COVID. So then it's almost time for Christmas at this point. It's the beginning of December and Christmas is 3 weeks away, and I'm doing it. So I did it. And then of course I ended up exacerbating my issue with my leg and all the good stuff. In the middle of that, there have been some, Q4 is very, very busy. I'm in human resources. That's my profession by day. And it's a very busy time at this time of year. And I had just a few months ago been told that I could work from home 100%. But what that means, I'm local here. So I I don't have to be in the office unless there's something going on that I have to be in the office, like if we're delivering training or if we're having benefit enrollment meetings, or there's a meeting with the executives that I need to be at, or whatever it might be. I'm sorry, I just got the hiccups. Whatever it might be, then I have to go on site for that because I only live 10 minutes from the office. So I just happen to have to be on site. And when you're physically challenged, then it just makes it all so much worse. So in the middle of that was the holidays in terms of our spending and all of that kind of stuff. And we totally overspent at Christmas, and more than I planned, I should say. We spent more than I planned. And Matt is not working, and so we don't have his income. And so that has made things hard as well. And so, yeah, that's the life that's been happening. And I will say this, in terms of budget and financial type conversation, to just wrap this up, in 2017, when this happened the first time, when Matt could not work for 10 months, which I am afraid that we may be in that stretch right now. It's very possible. He is shooting to go back at the 1st of April, but we are more than 2 months away from that, and we're not anywhere near, I can tell, he is not anywhere near able to go back to work. And let me just share another thing that he did one day that shows the symptoms that he's having. And he apologized to me later and said, I totally know better, but in that moment, reason made no sense to me. I was on a call with executives here at my home office, and I was talking with them, and they were talking to me, and my door was closed here and over here, and he came to the door. He knocked on the door, opened the door, let the dog come in while I'm on a call. And I was mortified. And he said, this will just take a second. And I looked at him and said, I cannot do this. I luckily very quickly turned off my camera and my mic while they were talking to me and said, I cannot do this right now. I am in the middle of a conversation. Please take him and go. And so he left. And later that day, I had moved on, and, we were all, I'd honestly forgotten about it, but he mentioned it to me that night, and he said, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I can't work right now. Like, I know, I heard you talking. I know I should not have knocked on the door, but because of my anxiety and everything, it just felt super urgent. Like, it was so urgent I needed to interrupt you. And it clearly wasn't. It was to talk to the bank about something. And anyway, just to talk about, where we are and why I think that we might be a few more months before he actually goes back to work. 5 years ago when this happened, we had nothing in savings. We had so much more debt. Oh my goodness. We've paid off almost $140,000 in debt since then. We have taken on a chunk of debt, but we've paid off $140,000 since then. So this, that really helps. We still have a lot of debt to pay, but it would be worse if we hadn't paid that stuff off. So I guess this time his condition is just as bad as it was back then, but our financial place is much better than it was. It is still not good. This is not great that he is not working and we don't have that income. I'm not gonna lie. This is not going well. But it was so much worse the last time. So I am just trying to control the bleed where I can, do the things, focus on the things that I have control over, because I don't have control over everything, and just encourage Matt to do what he needs to work towards better health. So that's where we are. I'll be back with some more content here soon. And yeah, I hope everybody had great holidays and you've had a happy new year, and 2023 has started off well for you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate those of you who checked on us, and those of you who stick around for my hiatuses and just wait for me to come back. I just appreciate all of you so much, and thank you for being here on our journey with us. Till next time.